For the second straight week, the Texans are going to face a really good quarterback. Last week, it was Matt Stafford, who we didn't know if he was going to be able to run at all in that game. He got the ball out of his hands very, very quickly because of this back issue and because of rustiness, et cetera, et cetera. This week, they face quite the opposite in Baker Mayfield, a guy that's very good, very capable of improvising and just holding onto the ball forever and then running downfield, not afraid to lay his shoulder into somebody. Here's Demeco on Baker Mayfield yesterday. This is from Demeco's press conference yesterday.
Yeah, Baker's done a really nice job. The thing that sets him apart and what I've seen him grow as a quarterback is how he escapes the pocket, right? Whether that's keeping his eyes downfield to find open receivers or just scrambling to get the first down. He does a really great job. He's gutsy. He has everything you want in a quarterback, tough guy. He scrambles to make plays, run and pass. So you just have to play together. And that's what we preach all the time is the rush, staying after it, playing together, and our guys in coverage, we have to make sure we're plastering and staying in coverage, covering the guys twice, but because we know he can escape from anywhere.
So the two big things about the defense last week, obviously a good performance, but some letdowns in the red zone, and especially versus play action. Matt Stafford was as efficient as he's been in his entire career versus the play action. Part of this, I think the Texans being really aggressive against the run was, as I would have done it, I think going with Matt Stafford, very little practice during training camp, this back issue that you're going to stuff the run no matter what. I think the Texans defensive players were overly zealous in that. They were like religious zealots. They were like, hey, we'd like you to, put a little bit more of this in the schools or whatever. Okay, what should we do? We should actually, I don't want to veer too far into this. Anyway, the Jalen Petrie dynamic I'm going to get to in a little bit. But as far as a mush rush, being disciplined, staying sticky behind you in coverage, but then also the defensive lineman having a disciplined rush. I think one thing that helps a lot in this regard is Sheldon Rankins. One thing the Texans missed last year was when a defensive end came inside or crashed the pocket and a quarterback flush, they didn't necessarily have defensive tackles that were athletic to replace and get out and contain a quarterback in that situation. I think Sheldon Rankins can be a really big asset. I want to squeeze this one in here just because it alarmed me and depressed me a little bit. Demeco with a very brief answer when asked about how Joe Mixon was doing.
Yeah, we're rolling with the guys that are here. That's the main thing. We miss Joe, miss his energy and his enthusiasm and everything that he brought to our team. But we continue to press forward. Hope he's doing well.
Yeah, I hope he's doing well is the one that bothered me, because when we heard reports about Tank Dell or people like that, hey, he's in the building, he's got a smile on his face, et cetera, and various other players in the past, but it almost seems like, I don't know. I don't want to read too much into that, and I don't think it was past tense necessarily, but it definitely sounded like somebody you haven't seen in a while, so I'm not really looking forward to the week 5 that all of a sudden Joe Mixon's just going to pop in, unless this is all ultimate gamesmanship by Demeco Ryans. This is, let's do Demeco on Emeka Egbuka, who had a very good debut as a rookie, guy that the Texans potentially may have been trying to trade up to get in the draft. Here is Demeco on Egbuka.
Hey, Egbuka, he shined in his opening game. He was explosive. He can catch the ball. He's a threat at all 3 levels of the field. That's where he shines. And everybody saw the 2 passes that he caught for touchdowns. Just an explosive player, fast. He moves all across the formation. So we definitely have to have eyes for Egbuka and also Mike Evans. We know those are their 2 top targets. Baker did a really nice job of finding those guys throughout that game.
Yeah, and you saw the one play that he had as a running back there out of the backfield, or at least the one that was in the highlights. I don't think the Texans are going to have to sell out the same way they did. They loaded the box to an extreme degree against the Rams. I don't think they have to do that, so that helps out guys in coverage a little bit on play action and what have you. But when it comes to Jalen Petrie versus Egbuka specifically, Egbuka played in the slot a good bunch. Made a lot of those good plays playing from the outside. But there's times or two where maybe Jalen Petrie's tasked with Emeka Egbuka. This is where I think the Texans did some things last week to kind of protect Jalen Petrie and his limited pass coverage ability. But they, A, didn't execute it properly, and B, I think they need to do it a little bit more. So once again, this week we have a really good young receiver in Ibuka, offset by an older receiver in Mike Evans. Just like last week, they had Puka Nacua, who's not a young receiver anymore, but offset by Devontae Adams. This might mean Kamari Lassiter or Derek Stingley going into the slot, but then there's the question of, okay, who plays on the outside? Maybe they play more dime. They play a heavy dime that has 3 safeties and 3 cornerbacks out there. That all depends on down and distance, etc. I think last week was a bad look for Petrie, partly because he was in some bad matchups, but also partly because there were times where he didn't have good eye discipline. On that final first down on 3rd and 8, he's playing the run too aggressively when he needs to be conscious of the situation there. So the positives that Petrie brings to the table are all there and all still very much there. I think it's a matter of just balancing out when and how you use them and what other cornerbacks can sometimes fill in for him. Also, maybe sometimes when you use C.J. Gardner-Johnson as up in the slot versus having Jalen Petrie play deep safety. There's a lot of things they can do. This is Demeco on the O-line versus the Rams. I included some clips of CJ under pressure. They do not match up exactly what Demeco is saying, hilariously in one instance. So these are just some shots of Demeco under pressure.
Yeah, I thought our offensive line did a good job. Again, in the game, we can help ourselves by stepping up in the pocket on a couple of the sacks that happened. But again, I thought we had clean pockets versus
this is the one that didn't match up.
Rams as well. So there were a lot of good things that happened versus the Rams. They made more plays than we made, and that's the bottom line. We hurt ourselves in the red zone defensively. We were down in the red zone 3 times. 2 times we gave up touchdowns in the red zone, right? We stop them. We make them kick field goals there, right? We're sitting here telling a different story.
Yeah, and again, he's going to, Demeco, I think he's trying really hard this year to show that he's not just always in the defense's corner, because he's been sticking up for the offense and criticizing the defense more so after the offense didn't score a touchdown in that game. We'll get to some of the self-inflicted wounds after one of these answers, but I think even in that little brief clip there of CJ under pressure, you can tell that CJ actually threw the ball really, really well when he was under pressure. He made some clutch throws with guys in his face, and I only showed about half of the good throws he made there. But yes, some guys got beat individually in pass protection. I think Ariante Ursary going to get better. He'll be better this week than he was last week, and hopefully he'll be better 5 weeks from now. How good? I don't know, but he'll be better. I think the combination of either poorly called protections or poorly executed protections, sometimes by the running backs, I think sometimes by the tight ends. I think there were times where the running back was supposed to chip that I don't think he did. And I think there were times where a wide receiver was at least supposed to give a shot to a guy on his way out into his route where they didn't. Those things, as well as sometimes where CJ called the wrong protection, that can get cleaned up very quickly and easily, hopefully. The Bucs do a lot of crazy blitzing and exotic looks and all of that. As individual pass rushers, they're not as impressive to me as the Rams were, but they still have some good guys out there. So I think it'll be better this week, and I felt better after watching the entire game a couple times than I did immediately after the game last week. But, of course, that brings us to Nick Caley, and how does Demeco think Nick Caley did in his first time out?
Nick did a good job, right, with the play calls. At the end of the day, we all have to just put ourselves in position where we can actually call the game, right? We were behind the sticks a lot, shot ourselves in the foot a lot, where we were in 2nd and long and just 3rd and long a lot. That's not a great place to be as the first time play calling your first game. So if we can play well together and stay on schedule, stay on track, then we can see how the game is called.
Okay, so I've been a little bit iffy on this because it's like, the penalties and the sacks especially, it's not like you can just excuse it. It's like, hey, all we have to do is stop doing stupid stuff and then we'll be all right. But also, just how often did it actually hurt or harm the Texans? And it's interesting because there's 3 times where either a sack or a penalty really did the Texans in. And if I can remember where they are here. Okay, so the first one was, let me make this bigger for you guys. The first drive right off the bat, you had a 3-yard run. You had the incompletion, it was 1st and 20. You had the holding, which was kind of a bogus holding, incompletion. Then you had a delay of game on 2nd and 17, or on 3rd and 17. That was a sloppy ass series right there. So that's one series that was done in by penalties. Then we go to another series that was done in by either penalties or poor play. It was in the second quarter. This is midway through. They got sacked on 2nd and 3. That made it 3rd and 16. So, all right, the negative play there, taking the sack and get rid of that, and maybe you do something. But a negative play got him back. But that's a football play that you're screwing up there. And then the third one that was actually done in by penalties. There's only the second one that was actually done in by penalties was the 10-yard penalty with did I bring the same one up there? Did that pop up? Yeah, anyway. Okay, so anyway, I might have done a duplicate here. There were 3 series that I counted that were done in by either self-inflicted wounds or penalties. And you might say that doesn't sound like a whole lot. This was a low possession game. There were only 9 offensive possessions for the Texans. On average, you've got 11 or 12 possessions in a game. So it ended up being 33% of the drives you shot yourself in the foot, 2 of them with penalties. So even 2 out of 9, even though it doesn't sound like a lot, you're looking at 20% or so of your drives done in by self-inflicted or by penalties themselves. And then obviously the other ones, even if they didn't kill a drive, they certainly hurt field possession or what have you. Those are the ones that actually kept you in 3rd and extremely long situations. And then just the lack of positive runs a few times, even though they improved in some regards. It's fixable, and it did have an impact in that game. This one I disagree on Demeco a little bit, but this is the answer that every single coach ever is going to give. Somebody asked a question about guys who just seem to shine under the bright lights of a Monday night or playoff environment or something like this. This is 100% the answer that I predicted Demeco would give. This is 100% the answer every coach is going to give, and yet they're lying a little bit when they do it.
Again, every game to me is really, it's the same. Once the ball is kicked off, I always say this, it's football. It doesn't matter. You playing on Monday, Sunday, when, it doesn't matter. It's about how you prepare, how you show up for those 60 minutes. So it's not about you're going to play better because you're on Monday night or Sunday night. That's pie in the sky. You got to line up, play football, execute, do what you're supposed to do, no matter when the ball, what day, what time. Football is football. So that's what we got to go do. We got to go play good football no matter when, no matter where.
Yeah, 100%. And yet, look, there's guys that are primetime performers. There's some guys that just show up. And, as a coach, you want everybody to be blue collar as hell and no, we play the exact same way, whether it's a Tuesday afternoon or a Monday night. Some guys just do respond to it. And I used to be grizzled and want to be old school like that. But I think that honestly, Nico Collins is everything you want in terms of a guy and how he works and low ego and everything. But man, he shows up in big-time games. Starting with a play-in game in Indianapolis a couple years ago, on into the game versus Buffalo last year. He shows up big time. And I think part of it, too, might be, and this is the one thing that Bobby Sloak was really good at, was dialing up moments like that. If you take advantage of an amped-up defense and they're trying to run up and hit everything that moves in a primetime game and maybe lose their heads a little bit, that's when you could potentially spring guys like Nico Collins. So I lean into it full force. And if you think that's a soft attitude, I'm reading this book by Dan Gable, one of the best all-time wrestlers ever, and then an even better coach, was the coach at University of Iowa forever. And they were known for just being hard-edged, maniacally hardworking, psychotic dudes at Iowa. But he was telling a story about 2 twins whose name escapes me right now. But he was talking about how these guys just, man, they weren't all that good in practice, but when they got in the environment of these huge matches, and in Iowa, wrestling is that, Iowa is like college basketball in a lot of places. It gets intense in those things. And you get into national championship environments. These guys were just different wrestlers. So some guys are like that. They're just big-time performers. Dom Capers used to tell me about Kevin Green. Dom had a bunch of great stories about Kevin Green, but he said Kevin Green was the absolute worst practice player you've ever seen. And it wasn't that he didn't work hard or anything. He just wasn't good. And he wasn't all that physically gifted, but he showed up in games and he was just a completely different guy. There's no accounting for it. You just can't always you can't always control these things. See a lot of discussion about Mixon. Yeah, Mixon cannot practice on IR. I get that. And I know I saw a couple of people say that Demeco was talking about that Demeco's just talking about not having his energy out at practice and everything. It wasn't that freaked me out a little bit. It was at the end when he said, we hope he's doing well. Not, hey, he's doing great, or yeah, we've checked in on him, or yes, he's making progress the way, I don't know. It was just the way he said, we hope he's doing well. And I with the disclaimer that I don't want to read too much into it. That's just the way that I kind of took it in my gut. Tim Ryan, the Texans D needs to win the takeaway battle to have a chance. Yeah, I don't expect our offense to score like the Ravens did. Okay, I don't know which game you're talking about, but as far as versus the Bucs, because the Bucs played the Falcons last week. So as far as maybe you're talking about the Ravens game in general on down the road. I'll leave that alone. I think the Texans defense thrives on turnovers to begin with. I don't have the numbers, but last year the red zone defense wasn't great, and they would also randomly give up big passes throughout the year. It felt like more of the same on Sunday. When it comes to the big passes, that was one of their biggest deficits. The things that they struggled in last year, where it just didn't match up to how they performed otherwise, were big passes allowed, passing touchdowns. They allowed a lot of passing touchdowns despite being a really good pass defense, and then big plays in general. And then against the play action, they just weren't that good against the play action. That's what popped up again in the game on Sunday. They were just abysmal in play action, and I hoped to see a big change or difference in that, but that was not to be. So when it comes to the play action, just the eye discipline that Demeco's talked about this week, they just need to dial in on all of that. We got a Nick Caley. I am catching up on every damn press conference today, and I'm going to try to do Nick Caley's press conference in a couple hours. If you haven't already, give me an old likers and a subscribe and all that stuff. Helps out.